everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Daniel Lucas, former ultra runner, inventor and founder of the Sprout Spout, and host of the Chasing Energy podcast. I'm super excited about this because I believe there's a really strong connection between health and wellness and success as an entrepreneur. So with that, welcome, Daniel, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Hey, I'm honored to be here, Brett. It's so good to connect with you, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about.
Let's do it.
I'm not
I'm
sure where
ready.
to start, but I know you're going to be able to share some amazing tips with us, and I do have a bunch of questions to ask, but I do want to start off a little bit with your background. So can you share with us why you became so interested in health and nutrition to begin with?
I'm so glad you asked that question. When I was 25, I had no college degree. I was working in a manufacturing role in IT. I did 7 years of night school while I was working full time. And during that process of having up to 2 pots of coffee a day, 2 Advils a day, it was a lot of driving, a lot of sitting. It wrecked my body. So that by the time that I had finished my bachelor's degree, I had permanent dark circles under my eyes. I was overweight, and I was constantly in back pain. So when I finished that degree, that was the first time where I was now at this point 32, and my son was about to be born. And I said, I just finished my MBA, and I said, my body is completely wrecked. I have got to turn this around, or it's going to be a long, painful ride. So that was when I first took control of my health, and I started running and things like that. And then, of course, as I started getting further into health, I started weighing out my nutrition a little more seriously. How do I get proper recovery? So that was what my tipping point was, to say I was a very much goal oriented even in my 20s, but I was not aware of the consequences that I was putting on my body till I was probably about 30.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I'll tell you, I have a very interesting nutrition sort of moment of clarity myself. So I have two sons and a daughter, and I've always been into fitness. So when I was 15 years old, I started working out in the gym. I was, into bodybuilding, not in a serious like professional way, but I mean, I always took really good care of myself. And my sons grew up to be soccer players.
Mm-hmm.
And so my older son, when he was a freshman in high school, he was training so much, doing so much that he actually got injured. He pulled a hamstring, and it was pretty severe. So the funny thing is, we took him to regular, physical therapy and all these other things. He didn't need surgery, but he needed a lot of rehab. And so he went through this process, and he was cleared to be, he was back to functionality. So I brought him to one of his practices, and his coach called me over at the end of the practice, and he said, "Hey, I want you to look at this." And he showed me a video, and he just had the kids jog out and back. He said, "See him? He's off center." He said, "There's something not right about his." So I know he's cleared, but there's something not right. He goes,
Yeah.
"Do me a favor, go see these guys." And I'll tell you, he sent me to it's actually a chiropractor, but these guys do sports fitness. So we down there, and they're, telling me all about soft tissue and all these other things. Long story short, the guy says to me, "Listen, what he needs, because he's growing and he's exercising at such a high level, what he needs is he needs a lot more nutrition. He needs a lot more protein in
Yeah.
his diet." So I started literally at that time. I started grilling fish, grilling chicken. We weren't terrible eaters, but we weren't good eaters. I started eating a lot of whole proteins, and I was doing it myself. I was a little bit older, obviously, at the time with a teenage son, and I had a creaky shoulder. I had a knee that felt a little wonky. So I was okay, but I was working out, and I always felt sort of the aches and pains. I got to tell you, as soon as I changed my diet by feeding him differently, not only did he recover and get that elasticity back in his muscles, but I actually felt so much better.
Yeah.
All the aches and groans and pains that I had in my body went away as well. It was fascinating to me the impact that nutrition can have on your body when you do the right things. Amazing.
So it's a twofold thing because when you prioritize protein, especially from whole foods, what are you not eating more of? That's the thing that people forget. Oh, I know I have to eat the chicken breast. Oh, I know I have to eat the fish. But when you eat those things, you're much less drawn to eat the ultra processed foods because you're so full from the protein. I mean, anyone who eats a chicken breast with their lunch is going to realize you're a lot less prone to snacking until dinner. So it's a wonderful sort of like I like to kick my day off because muscle protein synthesis requires 35 grams of protein. So for these people who are having like a few bites of yogurt or a croissant, that may curb your appetite, but it's not kicking off muscle protein synthesis to where your body's actually recovering and building the muscle. So one of the things I suggest to people, I don't care if you intermittent fast or anything like that, that's your decision, but your first meal should be 35 grams of protein at least. So what I find is if you get that 35 grams and kick off that muscle protein synthesis, your appetite for the rest of the day is so much more even keel because you're giving your body the kickoff to start the recovery and the muscle building. The only other meal I prioritize after that is your dinner. So make sure that when you're going to bed, you get enough that while you're asleep, you've got all the protein it needs for the body to do the recovery.
Yeah, that's fascinating and really good to know. And I'm telling you firsthand, I experienced that.
Yeah.
So we have clarity. I know the health and wellness
hmm
fields can seem a bit ambiguous to people, right?
Super.
It's sort of people aren't really sure
Super.
what's included. So in your experience, what's included beyond just eating well and nutrition in those areas?
So you're asking for clarity and eating well nutrition, and you're talking about in terms of being healthy or
Well, just in terms of the wellness industry, when we talk about that, I mean, obviously, right? So nutrition and what we eat is part of it, but what about the role of fitness or sleep or any of these other things? I mean, how do they weigh into it? How important do you think those are?
well, as far as the most important thing, I would say sleep is by far the most important because it's almost impossible to get a good training session when you have not had proper rest. You can do it when you're younger, but after 40, I would say it's it's very hard to get a proper training session and probably going back to I like to highlight apparently on this interview I'm highlighted neglected things. You don't actually get better from doing hard workouts after while you're doing the workout. You actually the when you get better from say a strong lifting session or a very intense running session, you get better the night when you recover from that workout. So if you do a hard workout and then you're limiting yourself to say 5 hours of sleep right in there, you are negating the benefits that you would have gotten from that workout. And you're going to find what happens after people tend to not sleeping well because their body's overly tired and overly fatigued and your body's not recovering quick enough. So you're lethargic during the day. So if you don't have a good night's sleep for whatever reason, I generally tell people that's a great day to do an hour of walking and get yourself back into baseline and then go back to the well the next day because we're in this for the long haul. This is one of those things where you want to train for your body to be there for the long run. It's not necessarily for a race next week. So rest is the staple. That's probably where I lean. And as far as the training aspect, it's funny because every time I do an interview, I try to make my training advice a little more meta, high level. And I will tell you at the highest level, just plan on an hour a day. If it doesn't matter if you like to bike, run, walk, lift, any of those activities, if you earmark an hour a day for your health, active hour, you will be better than at least 90% of the people around you if you just earmark an hour a day towards, again, it could be brisk walking, it could be running, but an hour a day I find to be the sweet spot for people of you can get all the training you need. I generally recommend at least having a couple of walks on top of that during the day, but an hour of training a day.
So we don't need to be a gym rat in order to be able to be, healthy or fit or anything like that. We just need to make sure that we're spending time doing some kind of exercise and fitness work that is, something that we're excited about or that we will enjoy in order to be able to, use that or check that box in terms of our health and wellness then. Is that
Uh, I don't. I think the first thing I advise as far as the fitness aspect is what is the activity that you will do when without any type of willpower, much willpower needed. So when you say being a gym rat, some people love lifting, some people hate it. It doesn't really matter. It what matters is you find the activity that you will continue beyond New Year's Day or into January, which everybody starts. Um, The other part of that is I would say if you are not going to be a gym person, then after the age of 40 or 50, you need to find a way, even if it's body weight, you need to do strength training too. Walking is not enough because that will help your heart stay strong, but it will not give you the strength you need that the muscle naturally starts falling off after the age of like 40 or 50. And that's where protein and strength training becomes more important is when you get up into that age group. Where you're going to see people start to notice this fall off, especially is if they're vegetarian after that age. You have to be clever about how you combine amino acids from different types of plant proteins to combine to make a complete protein. It is not, if you ever take soy milk or something and it says like 8 grams of protein, that's not the same as getting 8 grams of protein from, say, dairy or whey. It's an incomplete amino acid. It doesn't mean you can't do it and be vegan. It just means as you age, you have to be clever about how you combine those amino acids to where you can actually keep some of that well-earned muscle as you age.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I know, look, the science on that stuff has come so far. So in terms of nutrition, I just want to
Yeah.
go back to that for a second because one of the objections that I hear from people, if I tell them, look, the importance of eating well, I mean, I was guilty of it, right? I mean, until I started to find, once I knew that I needed to make better food, I found recipes that were quick and easy to make. But that said, obviously it takes a lot of time to cook at home every day, especially if you're a busy entrepreneur. So, are there ways that we can make nutrition more accessible and easier to be able to incorporate it in our lives?
Absolutely. In fact, when they poll people who have been healthy for year on end, the most common denominator was that they pre-made their meals. So I'm actually going to push back when people say cooking at home is or eating at home is inconvenient. I will argue, and I'm obviously biased because for all the years I was a corporate employee, I pre-made all my lunches, and I did not go out to lunch unless it was a vendor or something like that. Um, what is easy to forget when you're at a job, and I'm guessing most of your listeners are the kind of people who when it's lunch break at work they go out to eat or whatever. What's easy to forget is the amount of time you spend going to the restaurant, waiting on your food, and then getting back to work. That hour-ish plus is the food prep you could do on Sunday. It's probably going to take you an hour to prep all 5 of those meals pretty simply. And it doesn't take a lot of work to get on YouTube and type in food prep, high protein, blah, blah, blah. So I will argue that food prep is it's underrated tool in the arsenal. And when you look at people all the way from like The Rock and all those others, guess what? They have that food. That food is prepped for them 5 meals, 4 meals a day, where when they're in airports, when they're not eating airport food. And these are people with demanding schedules. They're basically saying, these are my macros, these are my micros that I need, and I need to hit those. And the best way to do that is to be diligent in food planning because then you don't have to use any willpower during lunch. You're like, it's already here. Probably one of the quickest solutions that I can suggest to people. I know a lot of people are going to curdle when they hear this, but I swear if you start it, It's hard to top it. Is canned sardines is one of the cleanest source of proteins you can possibly get. It has your omega 3s. It's low mercury because it is a small fish. Buy in bulk cans of sardines, and you will learn to say, okay, in a pinch, I can grab that sardine can, throw it in a bowl with some olives or celery and some mustard, and I've got a perfect protein. If you get them in olive oil, there's a little bit of fat in there to satiate you, and a little bit of, I like to use truffle salt. But for 15 years, that was my backup plan at the office, was if I'm in a pinch between meetings, I open a can of sardines, throw a couple of veggies in there, stir it up, and I go on with my day.
Amazing. Wow, I haven't heard that about sardines before.
Oh man, it's the cleanest source of protein. There's 20 grams of protein in a can generally, and so I usually add just something a little bit extra on top, maybe some feta or something like that.
Very cool. So I know that you don't just live this, you actually study it too. So you look at the science behind
hmm
everything. Have you made any recent changes to your nutrition protocol lately, or what's new that we all should be doing or should know about?
Okay, so I love this question. I asked this question to my guest as well, by the way.
Oh, cool.
So I will tell you the first one for people who want a quick impact difference. One supplement that I generally cycle in supplements, and then I see how they impact me, and then I cycle off of them to see whether I still need them. The one supplement that I have been very bullish on is ashwagandha. 600, I think it's 600 milligrams of ashwagandha. I usually take it later in the day. I don't know that it makes a difference when you take it, but man, do I sleep. I'm someone who wakes up a lot. Ashwagandha, and it's also good for your testosterone, but ashwagandha, I find that with a lot of supplements, you need to always look at the downside of being on this particular supplement. What are the side effects? But with ashwagandha, I have actually found that it is a sound supplement that has made my quality of life better. And that's because I'm a very light sleeper, so being able to fall back asleep is a huge deal for me to be able to recover. That is a struggle for me, is sleep. So that is a supplement. I would tell that's your shortcut answer right now. The so and you were wanting to know like what nutritional changes as well.
Just if there's anything that's sort of hot in your mind right now, or maybe
hmm
something recent that you've seen that you've decided to either incorporate in your routine, or something you think we should all be mindful of.
Yeah, I'm not I practiced low carb for years. I'm not a dramatic, I'm not a keto person or anything. I'm not even paleo or anything like that. But I will say in the mornings, I don't, unless I just did I still run a good bit. So unless I did a hard run, I actually don't find much value to adding carbohydrates to my breakfast. Um, it's not that I'm anti-carb. It's just that I don't find the value of my energy. I always look at meals and go, how does this impact my energy? And so I generally do a higher protein breakfast, but it's very common for me to eat a bowl. I usually do a scrambled bowl with eggs and sprouts in there. And then after that, I'll snack on an apple or something like that. This is going to fly in the face of what I probably would have said a few years ago, but I only like to have 1 cup of coffee in the morning after I've been up for about an hour or so. And the part that's going to fly in the face is I'd love taking a power nap around noon for 5 minutes. I've always taken that power nap and I'm never tired during the day, but I can just pop in a power nap and jump. I'm not the kind of person who gets up groggy from a 5 minute power nap. I can sit in a chair or just lay on the floor for like 5 minutes and then pop up and go right back into a workout, whatever I was doing. What I have started doing, there's no science behind this. It's just something that I have found to work for me. Is I have a cappuccino when I get up from that. At noon. It's about 12:30 in the afternoon, so I usually get up around 6 or so. So I've been up for about 6 hours, and I don't know if it's my South American heritage or whatever, but I like that little siesta. And I'll take a cappuccino, And I have the Oura ring, and I track when it. I thought it would interrupt my sleep. It does not. I go to bed at almost 10 o'clock on the money is when I'm the best time for me to go to bed. Not 9, not 11. If I go to bed at 9, I wake up like way too early, and if I go to bed at 11, I'm groggy. So I just finding that sweet spot helps a lot. But and again, this was an experiment. I thought for sure that coffee would interfere with my sleep, but it's what is it? About 8 hours. 8 hours after I have the second coffee. That's something, and I'm able to go right back into my day and do critical thinking tasks. So that's a little thing I've been playing around with, and I've had good luck with it as well.
No, it's funny. I actually like, I don't do it every day. It depends on the day, but I actually also, especially if I have particularly um, heavy or intense first half of the day,
Yeah.
I also find just the ability to unplug for that. For me, I like a 10 to 15 minutes. I find that 15 minutes is really a sweet spot for me where I feel like I can unplug enough that I can like shut down the engines
Okay,
and
are
it
your
does
eyes
recharge me.
shut during this, or you when you say, or are you
Yeah.
just talking to? Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
the
no,
whole
I'll set the
process.
alarm just in case.
Yeah, the
Yep.
whole process is probably closer to 15 to 20 minutes, but I'm
Okay.
actually probably asleep for 4 to 5 of that, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and then I also took kind of remove the pressure of taking a nap, the psychological pressure. I always tell myself, it doesn't matter whether you take a nap, just shut your eyes for 5 minutes, and then you'll be ready to take on the day. So
Yeah, because if you feel pressure to do it,
yeah,
then it's harder
I've
to
only
fall
got a few
asleep.
minutes. I got to, yeah.
But I'm like you in that when I wake up from that, I'm actually recharged and ready to go. I don't feel groggy. It's the opposite. Sometimes I need just that little bit of a break, and then once I come back at it, I'm fully recharged and ready to go. And so
Well,
I
going back
definitely
to the
become a
sleep thing,
believer
I
in it.
would say if any of your listeners have a bad night's rest, you'd be surprised, especially if you make a habit of it. What that 5 minutes will do
Yeah.
to boom, you're back at it. It really just to give your brain the way I picture it is my brain is like I just need to reset for 1 second and then I can start processing again.
Yeah, I see it the same way. You sort of feel like you almost get overflowed or like you're redlining and you need to just shut it down for a little bit, let it cool, and then boom, like you can go back to it. And so I find that is also a really good thing. I'm a particularly light sleeper as well. I have two. I have a dog and I have a cat, and the cat likes to wake me up at 4 in the morning for his tuna fish. So you'd be proud of him because he eats a lot of solid protein. He doesn't eat cat food. He eats tuna fish, fresh caught albacore tuna fish, no
Yeah,
less.
no
He
less.
won't eat the like minced up stuff or any of that.
Hmm.
I don't know where he's developed these champagne tastes, but it's what we've got. He'll eat dry food, but for cat food, he won't eat it. We've tried various kinds.
I
He
think you
just
need
looks
to
at it and won't.
trademark that the Ingram cat food and start
Yeah,
branding
right.
that. Yeah.
I know he loves it. So I guess, at least I practice what I preach. I got my animals eating well too.
Yeah.
My dog, I make eggs for my one son who's still in school every morning for breakfast. And so I make an extra egg for the dog too. So she actually gets her good
Oh, nice.
protein as well. So I don't know. So you mentioned sprouts, and I
Hmm.
know you also created the
That's
Sprout
right.
Spout.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what the impact of sprouts is and what this invention is that you made?
So all this came about just before COVID. I was watching. I always stay on top of like nutritional insights and updates, and it just blew me away when Dr. Rhonda Patrick did a video that went semi-viral in the scientific community, and that was the benefit of broccoli sprouts. And to keep it very high level, they contain something called glucoraphanin, which turns to sulforaphane after you chew it, and then sulforaphane is like the most powerful antioxidant you can consume. So here we have broccoli sprouts, and it turns out that it's one of the best superfoods you can possibly eat. Then, like everyone else, I was growing them in a mason jar. And I was very frustrated because mason jars, just so your audience knows, you can use 2 tablespoons of seeds. It takes you about 5 days, and probably every third time you're going to end up throwing it out due to slime or mold or mildew. And after you throw out a few batches and you're only harvesting a handful every 5 days, it's like, this is kind of a waste of time, which is how I felt. I'm not an inventor. I'm not a designer. Then I heard an interview with her on about 6 months after she had released that video. Of course, everybody wanted to interview her about broccoli sprouts. And she said on the interview, she said, I don't have time to grow them at home anymore. The jars are such a pain. She says, I'm trying to find a powdered solution. So that irritated me enough that I pulled out a napkin and started designing the sprouts, what would become the Sprout Spout. And it was designed to basically none of this, scalding water, sanitation and scrubbing and vinegar and bleach. It was, you just throw the bottom in the dishwater, it snaps open, it snaps shut. You can dump your sprouts. And then instead of 2 tablespoons, it can handle a half a cup of seeds. Well, when you have a half a cup of seeds and you have the part that's patented is the airflow, which prevents mold and mildew. When you combine those things, Brett, you're making so much broccoli sprouts that you can eat broccoli sprouts every day with your sardines or any other protein that you're doing. But it's easy to hit your macro targets because things like albacore, sardines, chicken breast, those are things that are very easy to just go, bam, I hit my protein. The micronutrients are much more tricky. The bodybuilders figured this out a very long time ago because you'll notice the 3 staples in bodybuilding: chicken breast, sweet potato, and broccoli. Broccoli is a massive antioxidant. However, broccoli sprouts are 10 to 100 times more potent than broccoli in terms of their antioxidants. The problem is big companies like Whole Foods and whatnot, they can't commercialize broccoli sprouts because they're not shelf stable. So that by the time they grow those sprouts, which are hard to do in the first place, and they get them on a thing, at that point you have 1 day to get them home and eat them, and people they're just like, it's not worth the money. So what I tried to do was make it feasible for anybody to have it makes enough that you can have a handful of sprouts every single day and never run out because you just start a new one every 4 days. It makes about, depends on your hand size, but it usually makes about 4 to 10 big handfuls of sprouts, depending on what type of sprouts you're seeing. So the idea there was to help people have to make wellness more accessible. You have to make it so convenient, and this was designed to where it's 30 seconds a day from start to finish. I time it. It's 30 seconds a day, and you have sprouts every day, pretty much.
Awesome. That's very cool. I didn't realize that about the nutritional value there. And I'm not ignorant about nutrition, but I hadn't heard that. So that's really fascinating.
I encourage people, don't take my word for it. Go out there and look at the studies. And people, when they hear about the studies on broccoli sprouts, they'll go, oh, why have I not heard of it? And it's just because it's so hard to make broccoli sprouts at home to the point where now you only have to eat, I've been looking at the data, you only have to eat broccoli sprouts 1 to 2 times a week to get the major benefits. If you do more than that, it's a bonus. But the basically to be in the groups of high benefit, you want to have at least 1 to 2 handfuls a week. Now, for me, it's easy because I just throw a handful of my scrambled eggs, and that's it. I'd scramble the eggs, throw them in a big bowl with some chicken sausage, and then I throw a big handful of sprouts in there. So I've already hit my macros and micros. Boom, I'm done. The one study I've been pointing to people to, Examine.com published a study 2 months ago. 730,000 participants. So not a small group. And it was a meta-study, which means they looked at 30 different studies. And what their takeaway was people who consumed high amounts of broccoli, which is classified as 1 or more nights a week. 1 or more times a week they ate broccoli. They ended up having 35% less chance of any type of cancer. So cancer is one of those things where it doesn't, you can be healthy, you can be unhealthy, and it can still hit you. And this is one of those things where I go, if you can put that tool on your belt, all the more power to you. It's not a guarantee or anything like that, and I don't think sprouts are the be all end all of nutrition. I think they're a valuable weapon in the war against obesity in people who just aren't getting the micronutrients they need in their daily regimen.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful for sure. So longevity, speaking of which, is a hot topic for people. I mean, who doesn't want to live longer, right? So what's the science on living longer and doing it healthy?
Mhm.
Obviously, to live long only is valuable to us if we can do it when we're healthy. So, are there things that we can do to, in addition to obviously sprouts and whatnot, to be able to, sort of stack our odds in favor of living long and living healthy?
I love this question because it's more nuanced than people think. And I'm actually going to give you three major takeaways from basically the top people in their field. One of the things that's the most correlated with longevity is your VO2 max, which is it's a sign of if you ever see those tests where people are on a treadmill and they have the oxygen mask,
Mhm.
that's a VO2 max test. And the way to get your VO2 max built up is to do something that is intense about once a week, an intense cardio type workout. Once a week is plenty, but it's also about doing a lot of time in zone two, which is where you're training on a bike ride or a jog where you can have a conversation and you're not huffing and puffing. So, for those of you who are listening, you do not want to do the Rocky Montage type workout more than once a week. I think that's plenty. But you need to be putting in a lot of volume where you're like, this feels pretty easy. But like Daniel said, I'm putting in at least an hour a day. You're building in the base. So that's your VO2 max. The number two thing is you need to protect your muscle mass. What is one of the number one causes of mortality in elderly people? They break their hip.
Mhm.
And when you look at people tripping, falling, it's two things. Your VO2 max will help you have quick reactions and a good, strong heart. And so you're less likely to trip. But when you do trip, what's going to keep you from falling over and breaking the hip? It's going to be muscle because your foot that comes out to stop it, if you're a weak person, that foot's just going to crumble and you're going to go off to the side. And if your bone mass, like you were talking about with your son, if your actual, tendons and all those things are not being properly nourished, they're going to tear, they're going to break, your hip is going to break. And just so you know, if you break a hip in your elderly years, your lifespan is less than being on death row in Texas. So these are things that are very easy, or I shouldn't say very, very simple solutions. VO2 max, your muscle mass, and then of course, do not be obese. That is the number. That is not. If you're obese, if you're morbidly obese, which I think is considered more than 30% body fat, if you're morbidly obese, you are putting the odds very much against your favor. You're not going to have a VO2 max, good VO2 max if you're morbidly obese. So that's the trifecta right there. Get that 1 hour of brisk cardio work or weight training in every day. You get make sure you're not overweight, and then between the brisk walking and the lifting, break it up to where that hour is filled with either strength training or some type of something that challenges your heart. If you ask me, that one of the biggest benefits of walking or running is clearing your head. Doing it, and I hate to sound preachy on this, but doing it without headphones, not every day, but most days, I generally don't like to wear headphones anymore. I used to consume audiobooks. I've consumed literally over 1,000 audiobooks, mostly in the
Wow.
self-dev category. And that's over a period of 25 years. I counted them up. And what I actually do now is especially on my morning walks or runs, I don't take anything with me because I have to have that time where my head is just alone and it doesn't have inputs coming in that are basically sidetracking my thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think that's really valuable advice. We all need some time where we have an opportunity to think and process things that we've already experienced as opposed to adding new stuff to it all the time. So That's great advice and also interesting. I mean, I wasn't aware of the VO2 max thing either. So let me ask you. I mentioned from the beginning that I see you're a real connection between health and wellness
Yeah.
and entrepreneurship because I think that it sort of all stems from the idea that we're trying to make the most out of ourselves, right? I mean, health and wellness, we want to live well and all that other stuff. Entrepreneurship, we want to live by our own terms and do something we're passionate about. Since becoming an entrepreneur for you, do you notice any connections or impact between health and wellness and all that and entrepreneurship?
Since becoming an entrepreneur, honestly, the fitness has become much more important. And that is because, honestly, if I wasn't on my A game in my corporate life, only I knew it. In the entrepreneurial life, it's all on my shoulders. So when I'm neglecting myself or not having the proper diet, it immediately shows up in my work, and I know it. Now, no one else might know it, but it becomes much more obvious. The point of that is that the consequences have been amplified because I'm working for me. Everything is on my shoulders. I'm in a startup mode right now. It's very hard to stay balanced because every time I go for a walk, I feel a little bit of guilt that I'm supposed to be working on X, Y, Z. Now, when I was in my corporate life, I didn't give a rip. When I went for my walk, I was like, this is my time. I don't particularly care what's on, as long as I wasn't late for something, it was my time. Now, when I take a walk, I go, man, there's like 10 things I'm supposed to be doing right now. So there's a little bit of guilt and shame in there. But the other part is that I know I won't be able to perform my best unless I do those things. So the consequences are amplified as an entrepreneur. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that perspective. I think that, we are the engine that drives the business. And so, as much as sometimes we feel guilty for shutting it down for maintenance, it's super important to do that because otherwise it breaks down.
Yeah.
You can only push yourself all out for so long, for so hard until eventually something goes wrong. And
Yeah.
so it's more important to have a longer term mentality and know that we need to invest in ourselves as well as do all the other stuff. So I appreciate that perspective. So where can people find your products or services or connect with you?
So my website is sproutspout.com, and my Instagram is at dplucas. I post, actually, one of the themes you'll notice anytime I post a recipe or a cooking video, it's almost always high protein. And I won't post anything that I don't eat on a regular basis. It's usually focused on how do you hit your macros and micros whenever I do a recipe. So I even made Nutella. I haven't posted that video, but I even made Nutella, and I made sure it was a macro-friendly Nutella. So I'm committed to health. But sproutspout.com is the best place to check out the Sprout Spout. You can order the seeds directly to your door. Thank you for asking about that. And man, what a true honor to connect with you, Brett. I mean, we talked a little bit before the call, but I really, truly appreciate the experience and the opportunity to connect with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure having you on. So let me just ask you one last question that I always ask. So I think it's really important. And I'm always curious to see what people will say. So what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Well, I don't know that I'm fit to talk about success, but I do have an answer for you. Your definition, dear listener, your definition of success should be between your ears and not what you see on people's social media and other people. I can tell you I make a fraction of what I made in my corporate life right now, and yet I get up and go, I'm changing the world in the way that I was meant to change it, and I have fulfillment at the end of the day. Now, I'll be the first person to say I struggle with, am I a failure? All the time. But when I go back to my mornings and I go, what is success? What does success mean to me? What does successful day look like? That definition is what holds me back to the path of going, I know that there's these other things that I could be pursuing and whatever, and they're more comfortable, quite frankly. But for what I define success as, I'm on this track. So how I would suggest other people attain success is by focusing on what does success mean to you. Because if you haven't defined that, you're just basically going with the flow, like the rat race, as they say.
Yeah, and I really think that's excellent advice because the thing of it is, it's very easy nowadays. We're overwhelmed with external stimulus and images of, what other people are accomplishing or supposedly accomplishing and how great everything looks on the outside looking in. But at the same time, only we know internally what is going to make us feel fulfilled, what we're going to be satisfied with as our legacy. And so I do think that that's, really important to make sure that whatever we're doing is personally gratifying and aligned with our values and what we want to do. So thanks a lot again, Daniel, for sharing that, sharing your insights, great tips with us. Visit sproutspout.com to get your own Sprout Spout that makes healthy living more accessible by providing superfoods on tap for you in just 30 seconds a day. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want to accomplish in your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.